Again, I'm Ana Carcedo, and I'm really thankful to all the things that Brady pointed out, because I'm going to talk about another nutrient deficiency. I'm going to talk about iron deficiency, chlorosis. And I always say it's really different talking about iron deficiency compared to all the rest of the nutrition deficiencies, because with the other nutrient deficiencies, it might be costly, or it is really costly, but there's a straightforward answer, and it's like, okay, you apply fertilizers. If you need, if you have a deficiency, you just try to repair it like that. But with iron, it's not that you don't have iron in the soil. You have plenty of iron in your soil. I'm sure of it. But it's just that it's not in a form that is available for the plant to absorb. So saying that, we're going to talk about the iron deficiency chlorosis challenge. So this is a map that's actually a tiny bit old, and also Dakota is missing information, but this is just for you to know more or less which is the area that is affected by IDC. And as you can see, all the eastern part of North Dakota, it's greatly affected by IDC. So all around South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota, we're talking about like 4.5 million acres of soybeans that they are grown in IDC prone soil. So it's a huge area. And this is more or less for you to have an idea of the economical impact of IDC is more or less 120 million loss every year just because of this deficiency. How can we see this deficiency in terms of yield? So basically, what you can see in this figure, in the x-axis, you have the chlorosis rating that goes from 1, that is a healthy plant, to 5, that's pretty much dead. And the answer is pretty straightforward, right? Like, you have more IDC, you have less yield. And this slope is between 9 and 19 bulges per acre. That's the range that you might be losing just because IDC. So it's a huge problem. So just stepping back for 1 second, let's try to talk about like which are the reasons behind that. What is happening behind this? So in all this area, or parental soil have a lot of carbonates, and so we have a lot of carbonates in our topsoil, and that's one of the main reasons why this area it's affected by IDC. Then there is another thing, is that this area is quite flat and have a lot of clay, so that makes the infiltration of the water is not that good. So there is a lot of time that that we have water logging in our soils, and that makes that these carbonates go to bicarbonates, and that's basically the problem. And then, as Brady mentioned, nitrates also might cause IDC, but that's a completely different. They affect it in a completely different way. So, and salinity as well. I'm just trying to go through this a little bit fast. So I really want you to understand what is happening, because this way you are going to understand better how can we handle it, how can we manage it if we know what's actually happening. So we're going to start with the plant that is in normal conditions, the plant that we have in our left. Basically, in normal conditions, where the plant is healthy, what happens is that in the soil, the iron is in a iron 3+ form. Yes, we are going to go back. We are going to take a machine. Sorry, we are going to take a trip to the past. We are going to go back to high school and remember a little bit of the chemistry that we had there. So the thing with iron 3+ is that it's not really soluble and the plants cannot absorb it. So different plants have different mechanisms to try to absorb it. And the way that soybeans do is basically they just exudate some acids and enzymes to the soil. And then with this, what happens is that this transforms to iron 2+, which is soluble, and then the plant can absorb it. So this is what should happen in the normal conditions and everything is fine. But what happens in the IDC scenario? So again, we have our iron 3 plus that is less soluble in our soils. That's the way that it is. Our soybeans just exudate or the acids and the enzymes. What happened? So we have carbonates and water in our soil. So what this is doing is basically is raising our pH. So it's basically neutralizing the acids, so the enzymes cannot work, and we never get our iron 2 plus, and then our plant cannot absorb the iron. So that's basically what's happening, which is the cause of why carbonates and water actually are causing IDC. Something that's really important for me is that you are able also to recognize IDC in the field. Do not confuse it with other other deficiencies. So I put 3 pictures of different deficiencies. One of them is IDC, and I hope you recognize it really fast. So I didn't know that Brady was going to use his potassium picture that I kindly borrowed, but yes. So here you have 3 different deficiencies. The first one for sure, that was iron deficiency chlorosis. How can you recognize it? It's really easy. It's going to be mostly in the top leaves. It's something that it's going to happen in the new leaves, and you can see clearly the internerval chlorosis. So basically the nerves are still green, but the rest of the leaf is yellowish. This is, of course, this picture is an extreme case. The first pair of the unifolated leaves, they usually won't show iron deficiency chlorosis just because of the iron that the seed contains. So it's just using the iron that was stored in the seed for the first pair of leaves, but that is, and after that it runs out of iron. So the second one is potassium. We already have been talking about that quite a bit. It's also really easy to recognize, mostly because you can see that chlorosis that starts in the borders. And again, this is an extreme case. And also something that is important, that you are going to see potassium deficiencies in the older leaves. And then, like, just as an example, I put a picture of a sulfur deficiency that you see. And then you can see clearly the differences with IDC, that in this case, the whole plant is kind of chlorotic, like you can see that lemon green color, but you are going to see the highest effect in the newest leaf. Again, you cannot see, as you can see here, it's not internerval chlorosis, what you can see here. It's just a generalized chlorosis of the leaf. So what can we do? And that's what I actually wanted to talk for this morning with you guys. So we always say the first line of action if you want to handle IDC is variety selection. And this might be a tiny bit tricky. So this is an amazing picture from Jay Gross, that this is one of the variety trials that NDSU does. And you can clearly see how some of these varieties are completely healthy, green, and some of them are pretty much dead. So the difference across varieties is humongous. But I have to say, this is a kind of a fun fact. This is actually a post from the Washington Post that it shows how females and males perceive color. So you can see females can seem like divide the colors way more than males. And this is just a fun thing to relate, to say, okay, when you're going to the field and you're doing the visual score of chlorosis, defining a 1 and a 5, it's really, really easy. But when we are talking about 2.5 and differentiating it for a 3, then it gets more challenging, no? And yes, and everybody sees the colors a tiny bit differently, and it's really challenging. So that's why I really encourage you that when you are checking for IDC scores, use university sources. University sources allows you to compare different companies because we can do that. And also the other thing is they are done, these scores are done by experts and it's done by the same person. It gives much more, these results are much more robust compared to the one that a company might have. So something that's really, really important is that you should not compare results of IDC scoring across companies' publications. So saying that, we do have this year NDSU released from our IDC scoring, and it's really, really valuable information. You can see here, I'm sure Linda is sharing the link in the chat. If not, you can just scan the QR code. This is really valuable information. So our soybean breeding team at NDSU scored 114 different varieties, so you can use this information. And they did it not in one, not in two, but in 4 sites across all the east region of of North Dakota. So saying that, you might see that some of the sites have had higher IDC effects, some of them have lower. It really varies year by year, side by side. And something that is important is how you filter and how you use this information. So all these tables always include the LSD, the least significant difference. So it's like the minimal difference that 2 varieties have to have in order to be statistically different. So in this year, that value was 0.1. So if you have a 0.1 difference here, they are statistically different. Something I like to do usually is check first the site that had the highest IDC score, that in this year was Carbon. But today we are just going to focus a little bit on the average across sites. This is just the top 10 varieties that this year were ranked that had the best behavior. Oh, running out of time. So you can take a screenshot, or we are going to make all this information available. When you're choosing your variety, something I like to say is like, okay, I know that I'm highlighting IDC a lot, and like this is a super important thing in this area. But of course, you have to choose your variety considering which maturity group you want to use. You want to also think on which herbicide traits are included. So weeds are one of the main concerns that we have in agronomy terms. So that's something that have to fit in your herbicide strategy plan. And also something that I've heard from a lot of farmers is that, okay, sometimes the varieties that have the best IDC score are not the best yielding. So something I say is that if you know which areas of your field usually are prone to have IDC, usually are the lower areas that kind of hold water for a longer time, maybe you can use better variety in terms of IDC in those areas only, just to try to mitigate that. So saying that, we're going to keep moving forward. I hope I convinced you that variety selection is super important when we're talking about IDC. And then now we are going to move to in-furrow applications of iron chelates. So there is a bunch of products that are iron chelates. I think the most popular is soy green. Maybe you have heard that commercial name. There is other products that also work. Saying that, let's dig a little bit about this. So Jay Goose did this research a long time ago, like around 2000. So it's crazy, but that was 25 years ago. But this information is super valuable. So he tested just 3 different varieties: one that was resistant, one intermediate, and one that was susceptible. And then you have it in these 3 different colors. And in the y-axis you have yield, and in the x-axis you have this chlorosis rating that we have been talking about so much. So basically what you can see here is that when you put IDC, when you put chelates, when you are talking about a susceptible variety, the change that you will have is huge. So you're going for a 4 IDC score to almost 3. When you go to an intermediate, you still have an effect, but it's smaller. And when you're talking about a resistant variety, or what we might call resistant variety, the increase on yield, on IDC improvement, it's even lower. So this is more or less the interaction. So something that it's really, really clear when you see this figure is this, that with iron chelates, you cannot make a susceptible variety behave as a resistant one. You cannot supply enough iron through the season with these products in order to a susceptible variety behave as a resistant variety. You are not going to have that effect. And I have to say, these products are usually quite expensive. So I was saying, okay, this was done a long, long time ago. And I know these figures looks super messy. So last year, I'm quite new. So actually last year was my first growing season here in North Dakota. It's the first year I could actually have experiments. So something I did was trying to play a little bit with this IDC score. And one of my questions was, okay, when we should measure IDC scores? And the trend was really hit and miss. So I did it with 2 varieties. One that's the yellow one, that is the resistant one. And that it's a whole story, because at the beginning of the season, the resistant one was behaving worse, but at the end of the season, it was much more healthier. So there is a lot of things to keep researching about what's resistant and what's not. So saying that, we tested at different moments. We scored at B2, B3, B4, and actually we went all through the whole season, going once a week, just scoring IDC. And the best correlation, we actually found it around B4, which is actually what Jay Goose was using before. That was B5. In these figures, you cannot actually really see it, unfortunately. But what I wanted to show you is this. So we have this tolerant resistant variety, that's the yellow one. And then we have the untreated check and soy grain. So this year, my susceptible variety, that's the green boxes, even if we applied soy grain, we did not even have a huge difference. But when we choose a tolerant variety, it was even better than, again, a susceptible variety with application of soy grain. The application was 1 gallon per acre. And then we're going to go to our last management practices, that how can we handle IDC, and it's using higher plant density or using a companion crop. I put them together because the science or explanation behind this management, it's basically the same. So we're going to go back to this figure, and I'm going to ask you to focus on the plant that is on your right. That's the one with IDC scenarios. What happens when we have more plants or we have a companion crop? Basically, they will use the nitrates and they will use the water that they were in excess in this case. So the carbonates won't dissolve. So what it ends up is that the pH won't change. So they will neutralize the acids. So the plant will be able to work the way around and get their iron 2+ that is soluble and it can be absorbed. So this is basically the reason why putting more plants or using a companion crop might help you deal with IDC. But putting more plants, You won't have a yield penalty for putting more plants. That's not how soybean works. If you're talking about corn, that it's a huge thing, but it's expensive. Like like the price of the cost of the seeds, it's a lot. So using a companion crop might be a good option if the cost that you're having IDCs, this temporary excess. And I'm going to mention Joe Ickley. He did a little bit of research on there. You have like 2020, 2021. And unfortunately, the years that he tried using oats as a companion crop, there were years that were kind of dry and they did not have IDC, even though all the locations that they did this research were in IDC prone regions. But that's how it goes. Even though he generated really valuable information, and what I'm going to highlight is that if you're thinking on the idea of using a companion crop, what Joe find out that if you terminate that companion crop, in this case, Joe used oats at 6 inches, between 6 or 12 inches, I will go to 6 inches. If you terminate the oats at that moment, you are not going to have a yield penalty. So if you're thinking, you're handling your IDC fields with a companion crop, this is something that you should consider. Saying that, I went through all my slides as fast as I could, just to make up the time. My take-home message here is like, okay, variety selection is number one. Second place, we have in-furrow applications, and then in third place, we have these denser plant stands. When we're talking about in-furrow kellets, are basically two that actually work. One is the Etna, that is soy green, and then there is other that I think is commercialized by Yara, another fertilizer company, that Jay Goose tests these products, and he told me that they work just perfectly fine, as same as soy green, but the price is more or less the same, so there is not much. And then if you want to handle IDC with other management practice that actually using a companion crop and terminated might add a little bit of carbon in your soil, and it actually might have good repercussions in terms of soil health. That's a good option. Saying that, thank you so much for your attention, for your time. I think I ran out of time for questions, so if you have any questions in the chat box, I will just answer it later during the panel discussion. And I want to say that if you have not heard about In the Pot, is the soybean update podcast that we have here in the NDSU in collaboration with the Soybean Council. You can just scan the QR code. I'm sure Linda is sharing also the link in the screens. It's 5-minute updates. It's weekly releases. We try to bring timely information for you guys to make decisions.